When we talk about electric vehicles, the conversation often focuses on chargers. How many there are, where they should be, how quickly they can top up a car's battery. But what we don't talk about nearly enough is power. Not the power of the charger, but the power feeding it. In the UK, the electricity that feeds homes, businesses, and yep, EV chargers is managed by distribution network operators, known as DNOs and independent or IDNOs. They're responsible for the last miles of the grid and own the substations, the underground cables, the overhead lines, and local transformers. So when somebody like GRIDSERVE wants to put in a new EV charging hub, we don't just install the chargers, we design the entire system, and then we go and ask the DNO if they can supply the appropriate power. And even if a project can be supplied, there are a host of other factors that could still impact its cost and viability. This is Knutsford Services in the northwest of England. Some call it the gateway to Cheshire, others say it's that point on the M6 when you realise you really need to stop for a break. It's perfect, therefore, for a GRIDSERVE charging hub. And that's what we have delivered, launching with 12 high-power bays on the northbound side and another 12 bays on the southbound side. These locations have been more than 2 years in the making because to deploy banks of high-power chargers like these requires the same sort of energy demand as what would power a big housing estate, and that is not a quick ask for a DNO. Nor is there a uniform approach to how these things are funded. In the case of Knutsford, this new primary substation was paid for by the UK government's Green Recovery Fund, and then GRIDSERVE supports everything downstream of that, namely these two substations, with one providing power to our EV charging station on the northbound side of the services, and the other providing power to the southbound side. Of course, you may now be wondering how we get power from here to the other side of an 8-lane motorway. And to understand that, we need to go back. About 3 months back. Tom, it isn't just a question of getting the power. So that's one part of the problem, right?
That's
so
one big problem, yeah.
And then it's almost, okay, we've got the power. How do we move it into the service area to where the power needs to be?
That's it.
So with somewhere that's already operational, like a massive motorway site, can you talk to me about what is required to get the power from over there at Knutsford South to over here to Knutsford North?
Yeah, so on this particular project, we have to directionally drill below the motorway. We've got a rig set up in the car park which drills from the southbound side right across to the northbound side of the motorway, which is 140 metres in length, and at its deepest point goes down to about 10.5 metres below the motorway.
These series of steel rods, massive steel rods you can see here, they're responsible for drilling and then boring these holes that go underneath this car park, underneath the Northwest's busiest motorway, before resurfacing at the top. And within those holes are going to be the ducting that will carry our high voltage cables to our new GRIDSERVE Super Hub.
There's a long process, so getting the geotechnical engineers, the specialist guys on site, they need to carry out boreholes, do surveys of the topography of the site so that we can understand the levels, the differences. And they'll work really closely with National Highways and their geotechnical team to get approval of the design in the first instance, so understand how far the drill needs to go down, what the makeup of the land is, whether there's going to be any settlement or anything when we carry out that drill. And once that is ticked, there's then on to the next stages where we have to actually close the motorway for a couple of nights. And we actually have to survey the motorway drainage network to ensure we know the depths of them drains, ensure there's no damage so that we can speak to highways and get all that approved before we start drilling below their drainage.
Hang on a minute, so you're saying to bring power to a super hub for GRIDSERVE, you've had to close the motorway?
We actually had to close the motorway for a couple of nights, to carry out surveys. So people probably don't see all that going on, but you know, once we've got that, it takes the guys probably a month to get all that onto drawings to provide us with a report, which we can then send to highways for approval. And highways have been absolutely fantastic with us on this project to bring this forward. We need legal agreements in place to be able to carry out the surveys on the motorway. And then we need a Section 50 agreement in place to actually carry out the directional drill. So all these pieces take a long time to pull together.
Presumably Moto and everybody else won't want to be doing this again, so how do you future-proof this site for further expansion?
So the directional drill on this actual project has been 2 drill shots, so it's 2 550mm drill shots across the motorway, which both have 4 ducts each in, so there's 8 ducts passing below the motorway. So we've got 8 ducts from the top of the site right the way across to the northbound, which are left in strategic places to pick up in future for future expansion.
So for now they're capped, and if someone wants to use them or we want to expand our charging provision here, you could just basically drill into those nearest pockets and then continue
excavate into them pits, and then carry any ductwork on from there to wherever your final destination is. I think it would probably be fair to say that we're getting towards the end of where I would call easy win projects have been delivered, where we've got grid local. It's a bit of a short off-site route, substation onto site. We're now moving on to these sites that have been a long time in the planning. Motor Birch had a directional drill done earlier this year, which we've just successfully completed, getting power to motorway service areas. If there's nothing in the local area for the size supplies we need, I think there'll probably be more complex projects in the future as well.
So I hope that gives you a little snapshot into what goes into building these hubs. And Knutsford Services is not a unique case. With big infrastructure like this that involves so much cost and complexity and so many stakeholders, there just aren't that many shortcuts. If a project is going to take 2 years to build, it's going to take 2 years to build. But the more sites like this we can deploy where we make EV charging easy, where we can future-proof for further expansion, then the more confidence that we're going to give drivers that any journey is possible in an electric vehicle. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.